When joining a ship for the first time, it's important to become familiar with its particular safety equipment, design features, and their location. One design feature fitted to many types of vessel is the use of powered watertight doors to protect the ship from the risk of flooding if grounding, collision, or structural damage were to occur. When closed, these doors become part of the ship's structure, acting as a barrier to floodwater, and a strength is vital. They are built from heavy steel, requiring them to be moved by hydraulic rams or powered by electric motors. Passenger ships may have any number of powered watertight doors located throughout the lower deck areas. Aboard other types of vessel, they may be confined to the machinery spaces. During initial familiarization, you will be made aware of the different types of powered watertight doors specific to your ship's design. You will also be informed as to when to expect to see certain doors closed and the procedures that control them. Common to all designs, however, is the inherent risk of injury if crew and visitors are not aware of the potential dangers or do not follow the correct safety procedures. Powered watertight doors are heavy, and as the name suggests, they are designed to be watertight. In an emergency, they must be able to resist the extreme pressures of flooding water, and yet still close completely. In order to achieve this, they are closed with a force of up to 2 tons. It's worth repeating that. A force of up to 2 tons. That's easily enough pressure to crush bone if you were to become trapped between a closing door and bulkhead. This could sever a limb or crush vertebrae. At worst, it could mean a very painful death. That's why there are important procedures that must be followed every time when using this type of door. In the first part of this program, we look at why powered watertight doors are such an important part of a ship's overall safety system, along with some of the immediate hazards. In the second part, we look directly at how to operate these doors safely. You may already be familiar with powered watertight door operation from working on a previous ship. Or you could be encountering them for the first time.
So, you have to have 2 hands free.
And in your new role aboard ship, it may be you're required to use them as part of your job. Or maybe you need to be aware of how to use one as a means of escape in an emergency. Whichever the case, you will not be authorized to operate them until you have been trained and assessed in their correct use, following procedures specific to your ship. This specific training will be an important component of your onboard familiarization and is dealt with in greater detail in Part 2. But everyone aboard ship, regardless of role, must have an appreciation of the operation and an awareness of the dangers of powered watertight doors. To begin with, let's look at why these doors are so important to ship safety. Put simply, ships' hulls are divided up into a series of watertight compartments. If the hull is breached, flooding is restricted to the watertight compartment where the damage occurs. However, depending on vessel type, accommodation areas or machinery spaces can be spread out horizontally across the length of the hull and consequently across a number of watertight compartments. People need to move horizontally between these spaces, but the ability to restrict flooding to within a compartment must also be preserved. This is why we have powered watertight doors. They are basically a movable section of the bulkhead that allows access from one watertight compartment to another. The doors are usually numbered, as their location corresponds to a monitoring and emergency control panel on the bridge. And dependent on their location and the design of the ship, there are some doors that may be kept open at sea under normal conditions. Others will be kept closed at sea, but may be left open to allow an authorised person to work in an adjacent compartment. Finally, there are those doors which must be kept closed at sea. Some may be opened, but only for sufficient time to allow an authorised person to safely pass through. Vessel designs vary greatly, so you must be aware of the door types and specific arrangements aboard your ship. For example, if the door is located within a fire zone, it will fulfill a dual role, and, regardless of type, in a potentially hazardous situation or an emergency, all powered watertight doors will be closed. So, everyone must be aware that doors can move suddenly, especially as an operator could be on the opposite side of a bulkhead to you. In some instances, alarms are fitted that sound as the door is about to move and continue sounding whilst moving. This may also include visual indication, such as flashing lights. Make sure you are familiar with the door alarms and warning indicators fitted aboard your vessel. When a door does move, always stand well clear. Under no circumstances should you ever attempt to pass through a door as it's moving. Instead, use the indicated alternative exit. You could trip, fall, and at sea, it stands to reason that certain doors will be closed under normal conditions in order to reduce the risk of progressive flooding if a sudden emergency were to occur. But depending on the type of ship, there are often legal requirements stating when all doors must be closed at sea. For example, the SOLAS Convention and many national regulations require passenger ships to have all powered watertight doors closed during potentially hazardous conditions. These may include sailing in poor visibility, such as fog and bad weather, or when navigating near ice, or through shallow waters. But most commonly, these conditions apply when manoeuvring in restricted waters, such as the approach to ports and anchorages, or during berthing and unberthing. This makes the period just prior to arrival or departure a particular time to be wary of operators moving doors to closed positions. Remember to always refer to your own ship's procedures in regard to the times when doors are most likely to be opened and closed. And it's possible these procedures could exceed SOLAS requirements. For instance, some ferries on short sea routes will have all powered watertight doors closed for the duration of the passage, as they sail constantly through areas of high traffic density. Whilst at sea, regulations also restrict the opening and closing to allow passage through doors to only those crew members authorised to do so. In other words, a powered watertight door that is closed is usually closed for a reason. And that reason is the overall safety of the ship, a situation that is monitored on the bridge. And unless you are authorised to do so, you should never consider opening a closed, powered, watertight door. Taking a shortcut here could end in trouble. Remember, use the indicated exit. Breaching of these rules is liable to result in disciplinary action. As we have seen, powered watertight doors are an important part of a ship's overall safety system. They are designed to be safe, and they are only ever to be operated by those crew members trained and authorised in their correct use. But everyone aboard ship regardless of role, must be aware of the dangers.
I'll close it first.
Be familiar with the location of the different powered watertight doors aboard your ship. Understand the hazards of their operation. Always stand well clear of moving doors. Under no circumstances ever attempt to pass through a door when it's moving. And never operate a powered watertight door unless you are trained and authorized to do so. At sea, there will be a number of crew members that must gain access through closed, powered watertight doors as part of their normal working routine. For instance, engineers working in machinery spaces or hotel staff moving provisions and stores. Other crew may only be required to use the doors on occasion, for example, as a member of a security or fire party. And some may only need to use them as a means of escape in an emergency, when a primary route is blocked. Whichever description fits your role, one thing is certain. You will have to undertake training and assessment in their safe operation first. And as door systems vary, this training will be specific to your ship and the company's own procedures. However, the overall features and safe practices are common to all systems. Every powered watertight door has a set of local controls either side of the entrance. These controls are often identical, a mirror image of those on the other side, and they always have an open and close position. Adjacent to the controls is an emergency hand pump, which can be cranked in the event of power loss to the system. Pump handle designs vary, so you must be familiar with the type equipped aboard your vessel. All door systems also have a secondary control station. These are located on a deck above the door, so that the door can be controlled in the event that fire or flooding prevents someone reaching the local controls. It's important to realize that there are two operating modes that all powered watertight doors work in: local mode and an emergency remote closing mode, activated from the bridge. This emergency remote closing mode is sometimes referred to as general closing, master mode, bridge remote, bridge control, central closing, or doors closed. For the purposes of this program, we will refer to them as local control and bridge control. The crucial difference between the two modes is the way in which the doors close. In the local control mode, the controls at the door operate both the opening and closing mechanism. In the bridge control mode, the doors close automatically after opening. In bridge control mode, the controls at the door are still able to open the doors, but it means you must always have two hands free to keep both door controls in the open position at the same time to prevent the door closing back on you. Bridge control is designed for emergency situations where the bridge team determines there is an immediate threat to the ship's watertight integrity or where stability must be maintained. In these extreme circumstances, regardless of type, all powered watertight doors will close automatically. The bridge control mode is intended for emergencies only, and its use is strictly controlled under SOLAS regulations. However, as the bridge control mode is an important part of any vessel's overall safety system, it is subject to regular drills and testing. Good communication between bridge and the rest of the ship during testing is crucial, in order that everyone is aware that the doors are about to close automatically. During this process, alarms at each door will sound 5 to 10 seconds before the doors begin to move, and will continue sounding whilst the door is moving to the closed position. And remember, most importantly, the door will reclose again automatically after opening. During your onboard familiarization, you will be taken through and assessed on the exact procedure, step by step, for opening and closing a powered watertight door. Open the door using the control lever. Hold on to the lever and wait for the door to fully open. And, where fitted, the door flap to be fully lowered. With the door fully open, and with both hands on both controls, pass through the door. Close the door immediately. For it to be effective, it must be closed. But remember to watch out for anyone who has tried to come in behind you. In the event of power loss or blackout, the emergency hand pump can be used to crank the door open. As a minimum, the pump has enough power for 3 individual opening or closing movements of the door. Remember, in an emergency, it is vitally important that the door is reclosed to prevent flooding. As a preparation for the readiness of drills or an emergency, it makes sense to treat all closed-powered watertight doors as if they are in the bridge control mode. In fact, experience shows treating all doors as if they are in the bridge control mode every time they are operated is key to their safe use. There is good reason for this. Whilst underway, a 4th engineer had just finished a coffee break. He was making his way back to the engine room and decided to pass through a powered watertight door adjacent to the upper level platform. He was later found unconscious on a lower level by the main engine. His leg was bleeding severely and he had suffered fatal head injuries. There were no witnesses to the incident. However, there was a blood trail that led from the lower level back to the door. For whatever reason, at the time of the incident, the ship's powered watertight doors had been in the bridge control mode. In line with the amount of blood found at the door and the injuries sustained to his leg, it's believed the 4th engineer had opened the door only part way before releasing the control handle and passing through. Failing to recognize or realize the door was in bridge control mode, the engineer's leg was crushed as the door automatically returned to the closed position. With his leg pinned to the bulkhead, he somehow managed to release himself using the engine room side lever. However, overcome with blood loss, he fell from the top of the upper level stairs as he tried to summon help from colleagues below. Remember, never attempt to pass through a partially open door. Always wait for the door to be fully open. If you tripped and weren't able to keep your hand on the controls, you could get crushed as the door returned automatically to the closed position. And irrespective of the mode of closure, both local controls on each side of the bulkhead are always held in the open position while passing through the door. For many companies, using both controls in this manner is a standard operating procedure that must be strictly observed. Failure to comply is not only potentially dangerous, it could result in disciplinary action. As a crew member authorised to operate powered watertight doors on a day-to-day basis, there will be times when you need to pass through one with a load. If you cannot ensure that you have both hands free to operate each of the controls, then you must not use the door. You must instead get another authorised person to assist you. Always wait until the person operating the door has carried out the opening procedure correctly and announces that it is safe to pass through. The golden rule should always be one person for the door and at least one person for the load. Large tools, such as wrenches carried in pockets, should be avoided. There have been incidents where these have snagged the controls as people have been passing through the door. And, in time, the boiler suit itself could become torn, presenting a further risk of snagging. Tools such as these should always be regarded as a load, requiring the assistance of a second person. It's always in the best interests of everyone to keep an eye out for defects and obstructions. Any faults with the alarm devices or hydraulic leaks should be reported to a supervisor immediately. If spotted before entry, you should not use the door, as there may be a malfunction with the system. Spills or leaks should always be cleared as quickly as possible to prevent slips and falls, but it is of particular importance in spaces leading to powered watertight doors. Doors should also be clear of obstructions to ensure safe passage through them and to prevent possible damage occurring. When doors remain in the open position, a dangerous condition can arise if cables, hoses, or gas and air lines are left in the doorway. If a door was to close, they could be severed. The area to the side of the door, where hydraulic rams protrude, should also be free from obstruction, and items adjacent to the door must be secured. If flooding were to occur, loose items would float free, potentially damaging the operating mechanism or jamming the door open. Remember, any damage, obstruction, or tampering of the door could compromise the safety of the vessel. Weekly and monthly maintenance checks will be carried out by the engineering team and will include the checking of warning devices and alarms. The hydraulic mechanism, valves, fluid level indicators and seals will also be inspected, along with the emergency manual controls. It is a SOLAS requirement that warning signs and instructions are clearly placed either side of the door. These should be written in the working language of the ship and check that they are present and legible. Regular testing of the system should be carried out at least every 7 days, and some ferries on short sea passages may carry out testing as often as every 24 hours. But regardless of vessel type, all crew members trained to use powered watertight doors should be required to take regular refamiliarization. This is important for those who may only encounter them on occasion. But for those crew members that use the doors on a day-to-day basis, sticking to the procedures is essential, no matter how routine it becomes. Accidents involving powered watertight doors are almost always due to incorrect use or the complacency of the individual who ignores the procedures. Procedures put in place for your safety. In the inquiry, after one particular fatal incident where a fourth engineer was crushed, the second engineer was recorded as saying, "Of course, if I had reported him for ignoring procedures, then maybe he'd still be alive. I've got to live with that now on my conscience." Failing to comply with procedures could result in disciplinary action, and failing to comply with procedures could also kill you. Whether you will be using the doors as part of your job or as a means of escape in an emergency, Always follow the correct operating procedures. Treat all closed powered watertight doors as if they were in bridge control mode. Always wait for the door to fully open. Remember to keep both controls in the open position when passing through the door. And always re-close the door behind you. And when working with powered watertight doors, always make sure the door is free from obstructions. Report any defects. And it's always one person for the door and at least one for the load, no matter how small the load might seem. Remember, when working with powered watertight doors, complacency is not an option.